Hey, good morning. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Daily Dose episode number 58. Happy day to you, Facebook friends. Apologize, no sunrise this morning. The weather has turned. You see the palm trees? They're blowing. You notice I'm underneath, not in the backyard there, back there. I'm underneath in shelter. Today's episode 58 is going to be called Too Familiar Tuesday. And it is Tuesday, right? If you're keeping track of the days, I know it may be hard if you've been stuck and you're off track and things are kind of all out of whack for you. And they may have been for the last, 10, 12 weeks now? I don't even know. What month are we in again? We are still in May, yes. Too Familiar Tuesday. So why do I want to call this Too Familiar Tuesday? One of the things, if you just look the weather, and actually I had to wipe off my screen here on my phone. It was humid. It's damn, you may see a little, like it looks like sweat. It's not sweat, it's just humid. The humidity here where I live in Florida has definitely turned. It is summertime. Summer is here. If you live in Florida, you can totally feel me on that. We're not really just going to be talking about the weather, but we'll just start it off with Too Familiar Tuesday. The rain is coming. I think it's supposed to be rainy all week. Humid, damp, right? That sort of stuff. I'm not complaining because I can say is the alternative to move somewhere where it's cold and maybe dry, but cold, no thank you, no thank you. So, Too Familiar Tuesday. Mondays are always like, oh, we're all excited. Monday's like, hey, and yesterday was a holiday, so maybe you're a little off track and maybe you didn't have to schedule anything in. You had a day off and you had a long weekend. But just normal Mondays where you get started off in a fresh start. You know, I love Mondays for that reason. You can start fresh, a whole new week. But Tuesdays come around. And I say it's Too Familiar Tuesdays for a number of different reasons. Like this weather, you pretty much can guarantee May, June comes around, the weather gets hot here in Florida, North Florida, so we get a little change of season. But it's pretty familiar. It gets humid. You got to put the air conditioner on. You got to be careful. You got to have the AC in your car. You got to be real careful outside in the sun. It gets real hot, so forth, so on. And today's encouragement, by the way, on a side note, the Daily Dose that I'm bringing to you, episode 58, is truly just for encouragement purposes only. We can start our days being filled with a daily dose of a lot of things, right? And you have really the option of a lot of those things. You have the free will to choose negativity. You can choose a daily dose of news to bring you down. You're like, no, it keeps me informed. Well, news is not meant necessarily to keep you informed. News is meant to bring the ratings and bring them money by watching and watching and watching. We're not really meant to watch the news. We're meant to look at the news, take a quick peek, and then move on with our day. But Too Familiar Tuesday, and maybe the news is just too familiar and not very, really just been kind. It hasn't been for a long time. But Too Familiar Tuesday, going into your Tuesday, what typically happens? And now you may be feeling this right now as you're getting into kind of maybe back into the rhythm, at least here in Florida. Things are starting to open up. Hey, good morning, Tom. Good morning to you. Good morning, Shirley. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you following me. I hope that I provide value. This daily dose, if you're following any of my content, I'm really the most proud of this. It's funny because this is the least as far as directed towards any kind of coaching that I do. As many of you know, I'm an online coach. I help moms and dads, busy moms and dads, try to lose weight and keep the weight off. Not just try to lose weight, get the weight off, keep it off. And I help them do that without long workouts and impossible diets. But today we're talking about Too Familiar Tuesday. And Too Familiar Tuesdays, what typically happens Tuesday, we kind of fall back into some of those quote unquote bad habits, right? And maybe you're getting back into your work rhythm. We talked about like Florida starting to open up and maybe your gym's opening up, maybe work, you have to get back into work, and maybe it's not the same necessarily, but some of the habits that maybe went along with your daily routine are going back to the same routine, being really, really busy, back to the grind, right? Too much on your plate, too many more decisions to make, too many distractions. And maybe you didn't have any distractions because you're stuck at home and inside. Now there's lots of distractions. too little time in the day, now you have to make up for lost time and start getting, your work back in and your kids back in. And now summer's here and you got to think, what am I going to do with my kids? They're teenagers. What about work? What about life? What about relationships? What about date nights? What about, normal social activities? Do I do it? Do I wear a mask? Do I give somebody a hug? Do I high five them? Do an air high five? There's so many things going on. And what can happen is those things that are familiar, we get drawn to those things that are just far too familiar. And the problem, unfortunately, with that is that some of those things may not have been really that healthy for you in the first place. Things that were familiar before, unfortunately, they may have been the cause of the challenges you were having before this whole pandemic went down. And we're in a time where nothing seems to be normal, right? The whole getting back to normal, you've heard that. I just can't wait to get back to normal. Well, I, for one, don't want things to get back to normal. I want things to get better. I want there to be a new normal. I want to come into this new normal. The things that maybe prevented me from getting to my best, the things that maybe I was familiar with, but were preventing me from stepping forward into a new direction of greatness, if you will. And you have greatness, just so you know. The thing is, familiarity can be really a tricky thing to navigate through, because it's just kind of common that we get drawn to things that are familiar. As humans, we just don't like change. And Tuesday, why I say this for Tuesday is Monday is always that fresh new start. And then Tuesday, kind of like what happens in a diet, is Tuesday you get a little stirred off track. You fall off track, you can't get your workout in. You ate really healthy, you meal prep, but then, you know what, hey, they opened a restaurant and I really wanted to go there and I really wanted their fried chicken and french fries or whatever it was. And I want to enjoy it with my friends, and you know what, we haven't gone out socially and now we can, and I'm gone out and gosh, I drank a bottle of wine, all those types of things that were familiar, right? And that can be really, really tricky. And I would say my question to you is not so much the too familiar Tuesday, but I have a question regarding that. How do you get familiar with things that are unfamiliar? That's my question, and really thought-provoking question for you. How do you get familiar with things that are unfamiliar? We've all had to do it. I don't care if you're talking about your health, if you're talking about your finances, if you're talking about the world that we live in, if you're talking about, the opinions of others, your friendships that you have, all those types of things. And I want to share with you a story about Too Familiar Tuesday. You see, there was a Tuesday way back when I moved to New York City. And I think it was either a Monday or Tuesday. I believe it was a Tuesday. I know it wasn't a Monday. But when I actually moved to New York City, now I had previously I was living at the time in Buffalo, New York. It was pretty rural. I had an apartment, it was not like a big city. I had a car. And then I moved to New York City. And I'm not going to get into the whole reason why, and you may have heard that story already. But I moved into the Big Apple, New York City. Now I lived in New York, grew up in Long Island, country, if you will. If you know anything about Long Island, it's way out, kind of in the country. But I would say as New York City, I was in the concrete freaking jungle. And I'll tell you what, I was very, very unfamiliar with how everything worked. It was overwhelming to say, if in any city, New York City is one of the most overwhelming cities that you can go. And I just ended up moving into New York City. I had a little tiny apartment. It was about the size of my water jug, like my water thing here. That's about the size of my apartment. It was very unfamiliar. Well, how do you get familiar with the unfamiliar? Well, you take a step forward and you open your mind and you open up your thoughts and you allow to take steps in. For me, I was moving into New York. I was basically engulfed in the city. Here I was in the concrete jungle. Well, I had to learn how to navigate without a car. I didn't have a car. Couldn't afford to keep my car in New York City. So I got rid of my car. Then I said, well, how do I get around? Well, I had to learn how to get on a bus. And how did I do that? I asked people, how do you get on a bus? Do you do the card thing? We had a swipe. How do you get on a subway? How do you get from here to here? Where do you go grocery shopping? And how do you bring your groceries home? So all of these things, right? And when I go to work, do I take a bus to work or do I just walk to work? Or do I take a subway to work? Do I get down in the tunnels and I don't even know how to get on the subway. How do you get off? How do you wait for the subway? All those things are so unfamiliar. Cooking, like how to cook. I thought I was going to have to cook in New York City. Well, you don't have to. People can deliver food. You can go out and you can buy food for cheap. You can go out to eat any restaurant anywhere. And there's so many restaurants that are so cheap. You don't even need a kitchen in your place. You barely need any storage because you're never at home in New York anyway. What about my bike? Where do I keep that? All these things that came up. Very, very unfamiliar. And I would say is that I had to become familiar with it if I wanted to survive. And here's my question to you is, into Familiar Tuesday, maybe looking at the things that are unfamiliar and realizing that you, as you step into Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, really honestly what day it is, as you step into this day, hey Lynn and hey Jaya and hey Jenna and hey Gay, hey, how are you doing? Thank you for watching. When you step into this is, how are you going to step into things that are unfamiliar? Well, for me, I went into New York. There was a plan. I had a plan. Navigate. I found a realtor who helped me. I had a realtor help me find the apartment that I could afford. I didn't just go and say, hey, just knock on the door. Hey, can I rent your apartment? That's not how it works in New York. In fact, it was crazy when you rent an apartment. You literally have to sign like on the minute, and you have to have cash in your hand ready to go. It was ridiculous. But I would say, did I try to do that on my own? No, I went to a realtor. Now for my neighbors, I had a couple of neighbors that I got to meet. People in New York in your apartments, everybody keeps themselves very different than a lot of the world. But I would say is I found out, I went to the subway. How do I get on the subway? I asked the person there, the one that's selling you the subway cards. How do you do this? In like getting around, I asked people that live there. I went to the people that have already done it ahead of me. For my business, it's no different than where I'm at in my business. As a health coach going online, I had no clue. It was very unfamiliar transitioning from being an in-person coach and a trainer and owning a gym and having these things for like 20 years. Like I've only known face-to-face, in-person, people's homes, in the gym, outside, at the park, boot camps, everything under the sun, in corporate gym settings, in small gym settings, in apartment gyms, all those things, all face-to-face. And I was very unfamiliar. And it was interesting because those things were so familiar, but when I went online, everything was like, how do I do this now online? Well, did I try to figure this out by myself? I might have, but I might have been still thinking about how the heck to do this. In fact, I actually tried to a little bit and I failed pretty miserably. But instead, what do? I hired a coach. I got an expert. I have a mentor who I work with that I invested in because it was worth the investment. When I lived in New York City, it was worth me investing in understanding how to live in New York, really truly for survival purposes, right? I gotta survive in New York City. If I'm gonna survive here, do you keep your hands to yourself? Do you say hello to anybody? Those types of, this is before any coronavirus. No, you keep to yourself. You don't make eye contact on a subway. You don't give out money to the homeless, like those types of things. Like, you got to be careful. They don't try to rob you. Like, you don't go into Central Park at night, all those types of things. I didn't just figure that out on my own. I actually went to the people that lived there, the ones that were experts that had already gone through moving into New York. And I hope this makes sense. So why do I share this with you? Is that you go into this back to normal, if you will, or you go back to things that are familiar. Be very cautious is going into things that are familiar, because sometimes we can be drawn to those things that are really familiar, and they may be exactly why you've been kind of limiting in yourself, and that could be related to your health. Maybe you were one that went out to dinner a lot over the course of the past couple of years, and you've put on quite a bit of weight, and then you said the lockdown prevented you from going out, and maybe you had a little bit of progress and now the restaurants are open back up. Uh-oh, that's familiar. I'm used to going out a lot. I'm a very social person. I'm going to enjoy. Maybe your work environment requires you to travel and you have to have dinner outings and things like that, and that's what might have gotten you in trouble before. How about this one? Maybe your gym is open and you used your gym and working out as your main source of how you got in better shape. But then you realize when you stopped working out, you were now home and you weren't working out as much, and now your eating habits had changed. Here's the thing, you go back to the gym, you start to work out real hard. It could be easy to go back off track with your diet thinking, oh, well, I'm really working out a lot harder. If I'm burning a whole lot more calories, I can consume a whole lot more calories. And honestly, that's got to be careful. There's a little gray area there. I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. It could be bad relationships that make you feel bad about yourself, social environments of people that can look down on you and not encourage you. Going back to those can cause you going into this kind of back to not a really, maybe a familiar Tuesday that's not all that healthy for you. And that's physically, emotionally, mentally speaking. There may be some relationships that you were able to avoid, social environments, saboteurs. I talk about this all the time with my coaching clients, is that there's saboteurs and they don't necessarily mean to, but they're used to you being a certain way. And when you're trying to make, say, healthy changes for yourself, like I'm getting on a healthy path and I'm only going to have a cocktail on the weekend, but the girls go out and they have bunko, drunko, whatever you want to call it. They have, the guys have their poker night and we're going to smoke cigars and we're going to drink scotch all night long. And you know what? I joined this coaching program with Mark, and now I'm going back to this, and I can't do that because I've had some good progress. I've lost 20 pounds or 10 pounds, and I want to start being healthier because I know I'll live longer if I start investing more in my health instead of all these things that are going to put me in, not the best situation. So I just want to share that with you is while you go into your Tuesday, and I don't know what it looks like for you, but maybe it's some things that are starting to become more familiar. You're getting out. You're able to do things that you were able to do before, is to be very careful with those things. Cautious. Just like when I was in New York, things are really, really unfamiliar for me. They weren't familiar. And when you're looking at the familiar, you might want to go back to some of the things that are familiar that aren't all that healthy versus looking at things that are unfamiliar. Looking at things like, okay, I don't know about a whole gym thing, but you know what? I've heard about this online coaching. There's a lot of good online coaches. In fact, I'm not the only one. I'm just one. But I would say is with online coaching, there's options now. People have options. You don't need a gym to get in better shape. I'm just telling you that. I've been doing it for a while now. And the last 2 years, coaching clients of mine are getting fantastic results. And they don't have to worry about putting a mask on or cleaning equipment or going into a gym that may be not as clean. I mean, let's just be honest. Most gyms typically weren't clean to begin with. Doesn't say they're going to be now either, right? And again, it's not to knock gyms. I used to own one, but I can just tell you is there's unfamiliar. If you're unfamiliar with things, don't be afraid. Just find out from the people that have already gone through those types of unfamiliar places. And just like I have with my business coaches, I've hired a business coach who's gone through unfamiliar places himself. In fact, I've been in the online industry for over 14, 15 years, I think. So I went to an expert. I invested in the expert to help me. And I'll tell you what, it's producing fruit. I'm getting success. I'm having great results. I'm having great value in that. There's a return on the investment. So, Too Familiar Tuesday. I hope every single one of your days, whether they're familiar or they're not familiar, that you have the best day ever. If you're not pursuing your best, if you maybe are having a hard time pursuing your best, if it's regarding your health, reach out to me, send me a private message right down below. You can send me a private one, you can send it in here, or you can also hop on a quick call with me. We can book a call and we can see if getting into an unfamiliar area means getting a hold of a coach like me who can guide you and direct you. Because here's the thing, I'm very familiar with helping people get in shape. I'm very familiar with helping especially busy moms and dads that are over 40, helping them to lose weight, keep it off, and doing it without crazy diets and impossible workouts, helping them do that. And I'll tell you what, all online. And it's kind of crazy because 3 years ago, I wasn't doing any online coaching. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, in fact, I started personal training in this whole fitness journey, helping others. And I was pretty clueless at that time. 25 years later, it's safe to say I've learned a few things. And I'll tell you what, I've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of effort. I've pursued health myself, and I can help you navigate in the areas that maybe you're struggling with. So listen, whether it's familiar or not, I hope today is an awesome day. I hope it's a blessed day. I hope your day is as amazing as you've set it out to be. And if you need help to try to start making it in that direction towards amazing, not just mediocre, reach out to me, send me a message. And if this message found you well and you found value in it, go ahead and share it with somebody. That's all I ask. That's it for me. Take care. God bless. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you.